Hello, Dr. Rodriguez. This is Vincent. I'm happy to be here with you. Just going to give you a quick little talk over the Korean population that I was very lucky to get to do a paper over. One thing that I had to mention with this one was that when looking at it, I kind of looked more toward the what we've known with the South Korean population, and mainly why is because the North is much more of a harder area to get accessible information. It's a very more secluded area. A lot of the data from out of there is usually kind of not as factual or cannot really be backed up as well. So it's much more safer to go the route of what we knew traditionally with South Korea. South Korea in itself has been made up of a lot of different religions from its founding. It was founded, a lot of it within the Confucianism and Buddhism ideas that were brought in from China. But you also had other ideas brought in later on in its century during its dynasty, where we actually saw the Christian faith moved in. We saw Catholicism. In the 19th century, we saw the biggest Christian group still to this day in South Korea, which was the Protestant movement. And as mentioned, it's probably one of the largest. One article I mentioned in the paper actually talks about a study conducted in preventing suicide that actually looked at how the Protestant religion in South Korea was kind of working to lower those numbers. So it was very interesting to get that aspect with it. So when we look to the family dynamics of the Korean family, it is very similar to what we read upon actually for the Chinese families that we've seen previously, or we studied previously. And mainly that's because they have sort of that Confucianism base to them. So it's much more uh, of a hierarchical system that's also contributes to a patriarchal system. We saw within it that the father figure at the time was more of the leading role for the family. Mainly, everything went through him. He showed a lot of power, but yet kindness to his wife to be shown. Equal amounts of love and compassion to his children. He was to be more of a guide, but also a protector, and they would show him reference in return. Any decision he made was pretty much the final decision. This kind of wouldn't change until we actually saw the conclusion of the Korean War. This is kind of where the dynamic changed from that patriarchal hierarchy system more into the nuclear family system. We saw more of the mother being allowed to work outside the home. Both parents were given the power of raising their children rather than just the father. So that made much more of a Western styled idea, especially when they began to encourage their children to kind of valuing a life better uh, than the. Well, let me put this another way. The parents valued to teach their children to live a life better than theirs growing up, which is why a lot of Korean parents uh, have pushed their childs to be very successful in academics in order to live that life differently. They've actually kind of brought in more of that Western style individualism into their children. This became very problematic. It's in some areas, specifically towards some of the elders who held on to the traditional foundation, which promises kind of that protection for them in the future. So that's kind of been one conflict that's also occurred. I found it interesting that we saw basically a system that was completely uh, created from an Eastern style, but then got a Western idea to it. You saw a collectivism group become an individualistic group, and it's kind of had its ups and downs, but it's been very interesting. And I think as we see South Korea continue to grow and develop, I think we'll see the same with the Korean population, where they will try to maybe adapt more to our Western styles. We looked at I looked at the education system, very similar to us in different ways. We talked about the values of how much the parents value in their children's education can be seen very clearly here. We saw, I saw the, once as toddlers, they've already been 90% have already been put into kindergarten from the age of 5 and up. So they have a lot of value in that. The government makes a lot of work to help students be involved and get a good academic education. So it's a big value for the country and for the population itself, as it's kind of adjusted itself to, as mentioned, our Western style of being individualistic. And for these students, a big chance. It's a big competitive area as well. There's parents that I talked a little bit about how they've kind of funded to get their children into more private institutions that are valued more for that competitive edge. So that's definitely one thing that has played a factor right now in the country. You look at the business field; it's very interesting, very respectful. Everywhere you go within that, it shares very similar to the that hierarchy system uh, toward where you show more respect uh, for those in power. So you have that from your business area. I've read some things, mentioning where if, for your employer, you're supposed to bow more farther than him or her, who's ever in power at that organization. You're to show respect to them. If you're a subordinate, you should always, during a meeting, point back to your uh, head of control or basically your supervisor and give them the proper reference they deserve. When it comes to business cards, you always take it with the right hand. You do not take anything with the left. Uh, for the traditionally, the left hand is used to kind of clean things off. So if you take it with the left hand, it's considered to be disrespectful. So either right hand or both hands. You also don't put that person's business card away in your back pocket. That'd be considered very disrespectful. Basically, you put value onto that card and try not to put it away very quickly. So a lot of the businesses systems within South Korea value a lot of that more traditional hierarchical system, to where your seniors of that organization are valued very highly, and if you're a subordinate, you kind of have to show that reverence to the superior member. It's a very just kind of like the school system. It's very competitive. It's a very uh, everybody wants to kind of be in that successful role. But what makes it interesting at the same time is that it's built on a relationship system. So even though it is competitive in nature, there still has to be a form of positive relations between one employee and another. You can't really have uh, conflict. That's definitely one big thing that is not valued very much in the Korean culture is conflict, and that's one thing that is always kind of avoided. Um, I've sadly kind of gone over my limit a little bit here. I think we had about 6 minutes. I'm at 8. So I'll just quickly wrap this one up. Uh, this was a very fun project to do. I enjoyed researching with what I could. The pandemic we had here kind of slowed everything down, and I had a lot of things kind of come up, and sadly, just things really didn't go as the way I wanted planned. But I did enjoy this project a lot. I really enjoyed learning more about the Korean culture. Of if there was ever a possibility, I'd actually want to go back one day and actually see how much the South Korean traditional culture differs from the North Korean, or how similar those two are. But of course, we'd have to wait and see when we could even get that type of information. But still, it was a fantastic project. I really enjoyed it. This was a great course. Once again, I wish things could have gone a little bit better, but just things out of our control that we couldn't handle. But I thank you and hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.